Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm Randy Wilburn. Today's episode comes from a special series we recorded at Zweig Group's ElevateAEC Conference in San Antonio, Texas. For those who aren't familiar with ElevateAEC, it's Zweig Group's annual gathering of AEC industry leaders. 3 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, awards, and candid conversations about the future of architecture, engineering, and construction. The content we captured was exceptional, and we wanted to share it with a wider audience. So whether you're listening to a keynote address or a breakout session, you're getting insights from the people shaping the industry. And if you want to learn more about attending a future ElevateAEC conference, visit zweiggroup.com. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
To get us started today, I am honored to introduce our opening keynote speaker, Mike Carragher, CEO of VHB, a generational company with a long-term mindset. Mike is a visionary leader with a passion for elevating not only VHB, but the entire AEC industry. As VHB's first non-founder president, Mike has steered the company through a transformational period of strategic growth, geographic expansion, and technological advancement. Known for his personable style and enthusiastic pursuit of excellence, Mike inspires VHB's diverse team to continually raise the bar by embracing new technologies and finding innovative solutions to their clients' complex challenges. Mike is active in numerous professional associations, including the AEC Research Institute, where he is the outgoing chair. That's where I met Mike, and I'm thrilled to have him kick us off on our big day of celebration. So please help me welcome Mike Carragher to the Elevate stage.
Good morning, everybody. Everybody up and rolling? I'm on East Coast time, so I've been up, coffee loaded, ready to go. So it is really, really fun to be here today. Yesterday was such a great day of all the pieces that kind of, if you think about how they all weave together, that is kind of, you can look at it as like, oh my gosh, there's technology, there's culture, there's kind of mindfulness elements, there's the systems I'm using. What I want to do today is kind of walk you through, it was interesting when I was asked to tell the VHB story and kind of what we've learned about ongoing kind of success. And as I was listening yesterday, I'm like, it is all those things, and they can feel like they're a disparate array of items. But if you take Lin Wang's guidance and kind of step back and go slow to go fast, you can do some pretty amazing things. And that's what the founders of VHB started, and I've had the opportunity to kind of continue to build on that. So what I want to do today is, I feel like it was pretty daunting to try to think of how do you tell the whole story. So I come to you today, and I stand here today really as a steward, an earnest steward of VHB's long, ongoing legacy of success. So steward and stewardship and the idea of legacy and ongoing, I loved the infinity symbol that was flying around. That's what we spend a lot of time thinking about at VHB. We're a company, kind of a partnership, really committed to a long arc of success. and got ongoing viability with the goal of making sure each of us leaves the company better than we found it. So I stand here kind of proud of that legacy and just give you a few snapshots of kind of what that means or how that plays out. Is clickers? There we go. So VHB has been around for 49 years. And it really has been this kind of ongoing, constantly upward trajectory. And we've gotten there by avoiding short-term thinking and really just focus on kind of conscious growth and viability. And this concept of the last 5 years of kind of thinking about it as an infinite arc of success. And what would you do if you were creating an infinite arc of success? And that term kind of came out of the Simon Sinek book of, I think it's 2021. If you get a chance to read it, it's really good. And we're a company that's really proud of this idea of being constantly and consistently recognized as the best place to work, but not just the best place to work, but a place that's constantly pushing the boundaries on technology, about doing amazing things for our clients, about being recognized for our culture, about creating an inclusive place for all our people to come together to do really great things. And then this last year being recognized, as one of the best managed private companies in America. I'll come back to that in a little bit. And I come to you with this kind of just humble confidence of what our people say about us. This really is a team element. Culture Amp, who does our internal surveys of our people every year for us, they've come back to us, and we kind of set a benchmark of top quartile of all professional services companies, not just our industry here, but professional services. And they're kind of amazed at the constant level of engagement that we get, from people being willing to take it, and then the items that really kind of focus around driving engagement. And unbelievably proud to say 92% of our people actively say they're proud to work for VHB. And an incredible number recommend it as a great place to work to friends, peers, colleagues. I mean, this is why you put these things together. And it's why, like I said, I was really kind of excited to talk about our story. Because it is a story. It's an ongoing effort. It is something that you can't race through, but it is really built on taking the long-term view. And through it all, it's a quest about balance. It's the idea of balancing short-term and long-term thinking, always kind of finding the right balance of those, recognizing that you need to keep them in balance. Balancing kind of focus on our people as well as strong business performance. Again, finding that right balance. If one gets out of balance, things are really hard to regain. And then this idea of even just in your ongoing element of business, making sure you're delivering the business plan, but you're also advancing the strategic plan at the same time. All these elements need to come together. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I know it's been interesting learning about new firms here. So if some of you don't know VHB, we've been around since 1979. We're focused on the East Coast, and there's a reason, and I'll tell you about that later so far. But we're really a group of 2,200 passionate professionals, engineers, planners, scientists, designers, technologists, who are really committed to this idea of inspiring our people, partnering with our clients and communities to create a sustainable future. That idea of really having a purpose drives so much of what we do. And then this best managed company, like I said, wasn't something I even realized existed until about 2 years ago. But Deloitte and the Wall Street Journal look across privately owned companies in excess of $250 million in annual revenue. And they come in and, they deep dive interview your entire leadership team. Then they want all kinds of information. They ask, and they're grading you on strategy, execution, culture, governance, financials. And to be one of only 2 or 3 engineering firms in that group that they chose this year was really a proud moment for VHB. And like I said, it made everybody in the company kind of sit up even straighter and be really proud that we've kept all 5 of those items in balance. So at VHB, what we do is we work for transportation agencies, real estate industry, institutions, colleges, universities, hospitals, the energy industry. We do work with the federal government, not at a large scale, kind of US DOT, National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, and then state and local government. And for them, we're constantly thinking about how do you weave together mobility, community enhancements, environmental stewardship. And so we're really trying to weave those services together. We built them out. So the VHB story started in '79. And it's like you can almost see, if you look at VHB's performance over the years, you see this inflection point. So I'll tell you how it started, what the big inflection point was, what happened there, and then how it really started to take off. So 1979, 4 traffic engineers in Boston. They were working for a firm that was acquired. The acquisition went really bad. They all decided to leave. They were going to start 2 different companies. The 2 young guys told the 2 older guys, we're only going to come to work for you if you 2 get together. You're a private sector traffic, you're a public sector traffic. We think you 2 need to work together. So that's the 4 of them put together VHB. And they went about doing traffic engineering, and pretty soon they started to add civil engineering services, and they kind of shot out of the gate. Things were just, it was right time in Boston to start a firm. So they started advancing. They really, kind of were picking up clients, adding the civil engineering service, starting to think about how do you think about these together, not in silos. In 1984, their clients, only 5 years in, were saying, could you help us in Florida? And could you help us down in, so that's how we opened a Miami office. Could you help us in Orlando? Could you help us in Providence? So we opened offices there. And they kept going. They were building their name, building their brand, really focusing on kind of how to run the company. And then they went to New Hampshire. They saw opportunity. The first time they strategically thought of, we're being asked by clients up there, maybe we should go up there and expand that. So they were really hitting their stride in the late 80s. And as you can tell, I've been around for a while, so I do remember the 80s. And the late 80s, we were just starting to coming out of malaise of the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. VHB was really hitting their stride. And then in 1989, the savings and loan crisis happened. A lot of other things have happened since then, so a lot of people don't remember, but there was a time there was 1,000 banks closed and defaulted on $500 billion worth of loans. Well, this absolutely decimated the real estate and development industry in New England. And the majority of VHB's clients went out of business, went under. VHB had been growing, so contracts, well, they didn't really have contracts. They knew that people would pay. So VHB was in really dire straits. The work had dried up. The financial aspects were in trouble. Then the bank called, said, we'd like to meet with you. They called VHB's loan. VHB went into founders went into a panic. They sat down with their attorneys. They sat down, with their advisors. To a person, the advisors and the attorney said, you should declare bankrupt. And then just go start over again. And this proud group of people with really great integrity said, no, we can't do that. We're going to find our way through this. So they mortgaged their houses. They found an upstart bank who was willing to take a chance on these guys. They had to reduce their staff from about 250 to about 140. Again, the work had just literally disappeared. And they went about delivering on all of their commitments to all of the clients who were still there. They started, feeling, okay, we're going to work our way through this. And man, they just worked around the clock, delivering anything they could to keep the company going, to pay their ongoing back bills and ongoing bills, pay the staff. And they really started to come out of this. In the early 90s, they're saying, wow, I think we're going to make it. And each year they would kind of check the financials. And then it kind of hit them at the end of 91, 92, this feeling of, what are we doing? This is like a merry-go-round or a Ferris wheel, pick your analogies. We put our heads down, we work our tails off. At the end of the year, we see if we made enough money, and then we start all over. There's got to be something more. Now, the other thing that was just starting to happen in the Boston area was the Big Dig was being talked about as a potential project. Wasn't committed yet. Central Artery Third Harbor Tunnel project, biggest public infrastructure in America's history, at about $15 billion all in. Every company in the U.S. and around the world wanted a Boston operation so they could say they were a local team and get in position to get contracts on the Central Artery project or the Big Dig project. So everybody was knocking on VHB's door. And these founders, and the few other people they brought into the ownership were sitting back saying, we just went through this absolute devastating situation in the late 80s. The team around us helped us through this. No, we want to figure this thing out. We want to kind of create a more viable company. We really want to create a company that it's got a culture and a purpose, and we have to think about an ownership model. And this is when the VHB of today, this inflection point, really started to make this turn. They went through a lot of years of kind of introspection, research, discussion with all kinds of people in our industry, outside our industry, and they wanted to find a way to move beyond just get to the end of the year and make a profit and then start over again. They wanted to figure out, how do you really create an empowered company that could go on? And they started realizing you needed to figure out a way to weave together a purpose that would engage and inspire your people. You need to really be able to focus on your people. Have your people be part of a team, not owners, employees, but really kind of bring it all together. And that you had to be thinking strategically. In fact, when they rolled this out, Rich Hangen, the H in VHB, he was the president for the first 20 years. At first stockholders meeting I went to in 1999, he pulled out this cord. And the saying, that a cord of 3 strands is rarely broken. And I still have that piece of rope on my desk today. It really hit me, the importance of how do you bring these things together in a way that would empower a company to go on. So that's what I want to talk through, because that's really what has made VHB into what we are today and why I'm so proud to stand up here today. So first off, this idea of purpose. Research tells you firms with a purpose, a real unwavering commitment to a clear, compelling purpose beyond just a business performance, outperform firms who don't. In fact, they're 3 times more likely to retain employees. They're 30% more innovative. A rate of return on investment of 13.1, which outstrips the market over the long term, and 64% more likely to retain their staff. So this was really important. All of these elements. But how do you do this? How do you create a purpose? And how do you start thinking about a culture of innovation and engagement to really drive success? These are all really good things to work on. So they went about this. They got together their 15 leaders, and they kind of spent time over the course of a year thinking of, okay, what is our purpose? Who are we? What are we trying to do? And they put together, which was really kind of interesting in the mid-90s, this was kind of a new idea, especially in our industry. And they started living with it. And it's a collection of things. If you really start looking at it with how we look at things now, there's elements of core values, of culture, of strategy, but it made them start thinking as they live with it. Okay, wow, we have to really be thinking about our culture. I guess that phrase sweatshop that's used about VHB. We got to figure out how to not act like that. Securing our employees' future, well, this is where the whole big dig, should we sell question came up. That's a one-time hit for maybe the key leaders of the company, but if you were trying to secure your employees' futures for ongoing, that's not going to work. We have to think about that. Wow, technology. I guess we have to become better business performers to afford investments of technology. And we really need to start thinking about how do we manage this company professionally. So, first thing they went was core values. They spent a long time, not just the 15 of them, but talking to the whole staff. And they really came around these elements, which today still stand as our core values. And this idea of integrity and quality in what we do, the idea of collaboration, right? Not just communicating and working together, but how do you really come together to arrive at the best solution, not win the point in a discussion around a table, right? How do you, in the mid-90s, the idea of diversity was, wow, we have a lot of women coming into our workforce at VHB. How do we address this? How do we, address the different needs and perspectives? How do you think about people of multiple generations working in a company? You needed to embrace all of that. So stewardship, balance, this idea of how do you balance, kind of your work and home life. In the 90s, that was the big thing. It was the question. So how do you make sure you have superior financial performance so you can afford to do these things and develop a learning and development program that would continue to create a long line of people ready to take VHB forward? So then they went to work on, okay, what core values are that? What's really our purpose or our mission? And in 96, it was really, okay, we need to be connecting what we're doing with our communities. This idea of, results for our clients and benefits for our communities, right? It wasn't about profit. It was about that. At the ultimate, why do we have a company? Well, we've got technical expertise, so we want to solve these challenges for our clients, but we want to do them with a way that's respectful and understands the positive impacts they can create on our communities. Now, over time, we revisit this, kind of every 10, 15 years, and then coming out of the recession, when everybody had their head down for a while, in the 2010, 2011, 12, we had to get everybody thinking, no, we're trying to deliver future-focused solutions that shape sustainable, resilient, and equitable communities. And that, again, got people thinking about it. It kind of sharpened and changed this filter as we were making decisions. And then most recently, it was really about this idea of coming, what I showed you, inspiring our people and partnering with our clients and communities to create a more sustainable future. This is our North Star. And our people challenge us if they feel we're not holding our end of that, which is great because it helps you focus. It helps people understand what you're doing. So when, kind of the idea of sustainability started coming into the lexicon in, around 2000, it was like, yes, this is the way we've been thinking about what we're doing and its impact on the communities that we're working in. So we should be a founding member of the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure and help fund the development of Envision. And we should be looking at, how to move towards kind of net zero on our projects, on our operations. But it made those decisions easy because of the filter we're thinking through. So, purpose, core values, now they're thinking of, okay, what does all this mean to our ownership model? So in 1997, Rich Hagan came across this book, The Living Company, by Ari DeGoss. It's a really interesting book. It still holds up today. This idea that if you look at companies over history, companies who have succeeded for multiple generations, not just multiple decades, what do you find? They're companies that think of the company truly like a living organism. This idea of it really is a living organism that has to be able to adapt, where people are your core asset. It is about the people. And leadership's role is to really think about how do we renew, not how to remain rigid, and this is what we do. So the job of leadership becomes balancing continuity with adaptability and cultivate relationships, resilience, and purpose. not just efficiency and profits. And as you started to think of, okay, well, that works, and how would we generate an ownership model like that? This is what the generational company, which is talked about, and this is the biggest thing that changed VHB, and the most common thing you'll hear talked about, in the halls of VHB, is part of this generational company and this responsibility of stewardship. This idea really of all of us and the company being stewards to leave VHB in a better condition than we found it. This idea that long-term success is a shared responsibility. It's a shared responsibility across the board to think about this continuous improvement and to pass on a healthy organization and to balance the performance of what we're doing with our communities and our people. So the ownership of VHB and the opportunity for ownership really asks you to act like a steward and to constantly think about these elements of balance. Now, we're owned by about 23% of our employees, but if you look at people who've been with VHB more than 7 years, it's almost half of our employees. So people who've been there and kind of understand what it means, and they understand these ideas, and they find value and purpose from it. To be part of an employee-owned company, it's something we're fiercely proud of, and that you're an active working employee, and that the selection process is challenging. But you have the opportunity to kind of really build a long-term wealth accumulation model for you and your family. Because it's not just about our employees, it's actually, the more we think about it, about the families. So you start to put these things together. A mission, core values, generational company, a vision. We revisit our vision kind of every 10 to 15 years. And what is that aspirational description of what we're trying to do out 10 or 15 years? And this stays alive. This idea of solving those complex challenges, differentiating through agility, innovation, technology, and all we do, this is woven in, and people talk about this. So it's easy to think about, yes, we do need to embrace technology more. How do we move forward? So these 4 elements give us a basis to then think about strategic planning. And strategic planning at VHB is, believe it or not, it's actually a fun and engaging sport, okay? And I say that because we've been doing this for a while. And what happens is you start to realize, oh, wow, this idea to just think about getting stronger before wider. If we're going to be somewhere, let's be all we can be as VHB, which is why we haven't said, well, let's figure out how we populate the whole country. No, there's great opportunities in the footprint that we are on the East Coast. And the idea of integrated thinking, and really working in a collaborative way, context-sensitive design in 2010, 2015, we really started to that strategic plan really called out that technology was going to change the industry. And we needed to understand what that meant. And that's informed us and put us on a good position. 2020, you can see we were getting ready to do a longer strategic plan, but we took a short view in COVID, and then the pathway to prominence, which really starts kind of giving vivid description and bringing things to life. But this idea of strategic planning, it includes literally everybody in VHB. We really do engage everybody. I spend time in each office every year. And in 23, when we were preparing the plan to come out in 24, the lunchtime topic, was some advanced reading for everybody, some ideas of what we were thinking would be important over the next 5 years to work on. But what did they think? Were we missing something? Did they have another idea that we should look at? And we compiled all these, and you can still find, kind of the notes from every one of those meetings on our website, and people can trace that through into how it impacted our vision and our strategy, which I'll show you in a second. But from that, when we do roll it out and celebrate it and engage people, it's a very active conversation. There's fun events going on around the company. And then keeping it alive in the language that I use, the language that our leaders use, the language that people all the time. Celebrating every success at VHB is tied to, wow, look at that unusual win that we have in the energy market. That's tied to that strategic element of our plan. So it is a lively thing. And every 2.5 years, we kind of step back. We bring together about 50 people from across the company. We assess how we're doing, any adjustments we need to make in the second half of that. But again, it gets people excited. And the other thing that happens during it, by doing it consistently, is you're constantly building new leaders because you're educating them on how to think about short-term and long-term, how to look out for trends ahead of them, and how should we weave them into strategy. So by the time you come around, and you have a strategic plan, things like technology and innovation, which we started introducing as real focus areas in 2015, we're now thinking about how do we not only address them, but how do they transform literally the way we do everything? And this is a common conversation in VHB. And those things that are really important to the core of what we do, how do we strengthen them? And what are new areas that we add? So everybody is familiar with why these things have been happening, because we're always thinking 5-10 years out and starting these conversations. The explore part is the fun part, because we get the board and kind of the executive leadership team, which is about 25 people, together every year, and we start exploring topics that are way out beyond us. Which is why when we had our retreat in 2018 on this thing called artificial intelligence, it was pretty easy to come out and say, okay, we don't know when that's going to break, but we got to get ahead of this. We have a chief data officer that came in 2019 to help us get ready for this. So when ChatGPT was rolled out, 2 months later at our partners meeting, we rolled out ChatVHB. We gave everybody access, to kind of a safe environment to explore AI, to explore it with VHB data in the ChatVHB version of it. You know what I mean? And just welcomed everybody to start thinking about this and how would we move this forward. So again, this whole thing is a constant renewal of how do you get people interested in strategic planning and exploring future trends, and people grow up learning these things. And it all then wraps up back to remembering all of these things have to come together for your people. Because at VHB, it literally is our people who make us great. I can't do that much. I'm one person. You leaders of your company, you know that. It's about the strength and quality of your team. So this idea of preparing them on advancing their technical skills, on their leadership skills, on kind of their self-awareness skills to be really effective collaborators, these are all important things that we constantly think about and weave in. And you're happening at every level. And you're constantly thinking about how do you engage your people in this? How do you create that community and that culture and the idea of all of us in alignment? It's amazing what you can do when you get people aligned. You can make great progress. Now, it's really interesting because this idea of preparing leaders, I just announced my successor a month ago, and we were really blessed to have a number of really great internal candidates. And as I'm working now in transition with Bill Ashworth, my successor, the thing we keep talking about is this idea of balance, right? Doesn't want to go backwards. That's okay. But that part of balance is really, really important. And balancing all three elements of short-term thinking and long-term thinking. Balance between focus on your people and business performance. Balance on, yes, we need to accomplish and achieve the strategic or the annual business plan, as well as move the strategic initiatives along. Because it's only if you're doing all of those things and you never lose the interplay of purpose, people focus, and strategically empowered. It's only when you do that that you can really have a company that is just constantly renewing and enlivening itself and bringing it to play. And so what they're doing is not just executing tasks, right? They're helping make their communities better. We're trying to make our community better, our cities, and piece by piece, make our world a better place. We have an opportunity with the kind of work that we do to literally make the world a better place, the built environment, the places around us, to create, that fires people up. And then for them to be able to be part of this and feel an ownership of it? Let me let you hear from some of my colleagues.
Future focused. We are not afraid to engage individuals from different generations with different backgrounds at different levels to give them leadership roles in areas where they will excel.
At some point, they're going to be sitting in my shoes, right? So it's up to us as a generational company to really make sure that the next generation is trained and ready to lead the company into the future.
The energy, the excitement, the vigor, and the desire for a lot of VHBers to become owners of the firm is really inspirational. There's added pride in what you do as an owner.
Employee ownership is a big factor and differentiator for VHB. It's an incredible opportunity to really grow with the company. And what I love about it is that being an employee owner is self-motivating. What you do every day contributes to the company, which contributes to your own success. You have this awesome company that leads with intention, that is so genuine and humanistic, and to be even considered, it's just like, wow. It speaks to that alignment. It makes me want to strengthen my abilities in terms of how I lead.
Being an owner at VHB is not only an investment in the business and the business success, but it's also in the people and leaving this company in a place that is more successful for the next generation.
That's why I get up in the morning. That's why I get the chance to love what I do, because of the team that we have. But this is not for the faint of heart. Like I said, this is an ongoing effort to create an infinite arc of success. And it takes time to put all the building blocks in place. And yes, you need to be successful along the way each step. But if you get all of these things together, and you aren't surprised when AI comes out, or you aren't wondering, well, am I making enough money to invest in technology or in leadership development? The answer is you have to do all of them. But you got to find a way that it all works together and makes sense for your leadership team, for your people, and that it isn't just about your sole effort as a leader to make it happen. It's about how do you use your opportunity as a leader to help make your team better, to help make your team understand, give them line of sight to what's going on. And that's why, like I said, I'm really proud as a steward of this enduring legacy. And as I kind of step back into the chair role, I'm excited. I'm so excited for Bill and for the VHB company to be on the sidelines cheering them on to take them to places that I never even dreamed of. Because it's been fascinating. As I've talked to Rich Hagan, our founder, and coincidentally today's his birthday, when I talk to him about what we're doing and how we're doing and why we're doing it, he steps, and I'll look for him for advice. He's like, Mike, I can't give you any advice. He says, what you guys are doing is amazing. We didn't even contemplate it would go where it is. And I said, but you put these building blocks in place. And you went through the challenge of working it all through over a period of years and coming together with this idea of purpose and core values and generational company and kind of, strategic planning just built into our DNA. And I said, so you must have. And he said, no. He said, that was aspirational. He said, I really thought, he goes, I couldn't say I believed, but I really thought and hoped it would put the company in a place that it would go on a next generation or two. And I said, well, Rich, because of the integrity of you and Bob and John and the others had, we believed you. And we took this thing and we ran with it. And he goes, I know. That's why I cheer from the sideline, because I can't believe where you've taken it. And that's the feeling I have now. It is worth the hard work and commitment that leaders do to put things in place that can succeed for the long term. That long-term arc of success, it's aspirational as I look ahead, but it's built upon the confidence of the team that we have in place ready to do that. And I'll tell you, so much of what I've learned, not just from kind of my mentors and founders, but at conferences like these and from peers across the industry, this industry, I marvel at it, its ability to renew itself, to work collaboratively, to share kind of what worked, what didn't work. And so for all the years I've been going to conferences, I just want to thank everybody for being so open and sharing those ideas. You know, and I just really appreciate the opportunity today to kind of share that VHB story. Like I said, it's not for the faint of heart, but it's amazing what you can do when you get 2,200 people and growing in alignment. So, thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweigletter Podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweigletter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.